Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brigadier General Randy Taylor. I'm currently the Director of Architecture, Operations, Network, and Space for the U.S. Army Chief Information Officer in G6. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the 2015 Department of Defense LGBT Pride Month event. Please stand for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the presentation of colors, the singing of the National Anthem by the Rock Creek Singers, and the invocation by Chaplain David Orvek.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's grand glare above the singing air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Halt! Right shoulder. Halt!
I invite you to pray with me now. Loving and gracious God, as we pause together before you now, we remember that all good things come from you. And so today again, we thank you for the gifts of life and love. And we thank you for our nation, where out of many we are made one. We are ever grateful, Lord, for the gift of freedom that we know, and therefore celebrate all who have and continue to sacrifice so that liberty might be known. And when this gift spreads in your world, Lord, we rejoice. And when the flame of freedom burns even more brightly here at home, our joy increases as well. And so today at this LGBT Pride event, we thank you for the way that this has happened, for sisters and brothers who nobly wear the cloth of our nation, who serve as patriots. We thank you for their spouses, their children, a circle of love that surrounds them. And we pray that you would draw close to us now during this ceremony, and that through this time we would be strengthened for ongoing service to our nation and our world. And Lord, as we gather now, we remember those who are forward deployed in places of danger at this very moment. Grant them your strength as they seek to make our world more just and peace-filled. And of course, we remember those who continue to heal from the wounds of war, even as we long and pray for peace. Grant us all these things, O Lord, for we lift these prayers in your strong and perfect name, remembering your love for us and your call to go forth and serve and love in your holy name. Amen.
Please be seated. Please start by joining me in giving a round of applause to the Rock Creek Singers. They are part of the Gay Men's Chorus here in the Washington, D.C. area and been an important voice in our nation's capital for the last 34 years. Also, thank you, Chaplain Orvek, for your blessings today. You know, when I reflect back on my 27 years of active duty service, I can tell you that the chaplains have always been there for me and my troops at all the right times. Thank you. Welcome to everyone here, to this packed, standing room only auditorium, and to those who are watching live as we broadcast this around the globe. We are joined here today by an unprecedented assembly of senior leaders, military members, civilians, contractors, all across DoD and the federal government, to include representatives from the White House. This diverse representation we have here today is extremely powerful. Thank you for your service and for your leadership by example. But out of all the people in this room, I do have a favorite. And I'll share that with you because I think who you care about the most says the most about you. My husband Lucas is seated up front here. We have been a family for the last 18 years, long before the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And although Lucas has never served in the military, he's accompanied me on all 11 reassignment moves in our 18 years, both here in the U.S. and overseas. For us to be a family all that time, Lucas pretty much had to set aside any serious career ambitions. We bet everything on my Army career. We also spent a lot of energy and time living an inauthentic public life. Gay service members were being discharged in record numbers then. And I wanted to defend our nation, and Lucas wanted to make sure that I could. Always faithful, always out of love for each other and for country. We always believed it would get better, and it has. DoD is a learning organization. We all are here today to make DoD better tomorrow than it is today. And this event is just but one opportunity to do so. Not just for LGBT professionals, but for all DoD personnel. Our keynote speaker today knows that our nation was founded on the principle that every individual has infinite dignity and worth. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter has made building the force of the future one of his top priorities, and has made addressing diversity, which gives us a strategic advantage, a cornerstone of that effort. This is not Secretary Carter's first time attending this annual event here at the Pentagon. He's a longtime promoter of equal opportunity. He leads by example, not only in the words of his statements and policies, but more importantly by his actions, as he builds the diverse team, not just across DoD, but also amongst his personal staff. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome me in welcoming, you've already welcomed me, thank you. Anyway, it is my indeed honor and privilege, sir, to welcome the 25th Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Ashton B. Carter.
General Taylor, thank you. Thank you for that wonderful, warm introduction. And to Lucas, your husband, and all the other spouses and partners of service members and DoD civilians here today. Thank you for joining us, and above all, thank you for supporting your loved ones in their service to us. Ladies and gentlemen, leaders of the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender community, Defense Department leaders, family, friends, it's a privilege to stand with you at this 4th annual DoD Pentagon Pride Month event. 4 years after the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, following years and years of gay and lesbian service members having to hide who they are, today we take pride in how they're free to serve their country openly. Because we believe in getting to a place where no one serves in silence, and where we treat all our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines with the dignity and the respect that they deserve. Looking back, gays and lesbians have long defended our country in uniform, and there are thousands of stories that illustrate their willingness to serve and to sacrifice. There's the story, for example, of Army Corporal Lloyd Darling, a 20-year-old Green Beret who was killed in Vietnam in 1968. Amid heavy fighting near the Mekong Delta, his unit overrun, Corporal Darling stayed back to cover its retreat to safety. His fellow soldiers knew he was gay, and they never forgot his courage under fire. Years later, one of his battle buddies said, and I quote, "He died for us." There's also the story of Marine Corps veteran Staff Sergeant Eric Alva, the first American wounded in the Iraq War. He'd been serving for 13 years with tours in Japan and Somalia when, just hours after the invasion began, a landmine exploded beneath him. Staff Sergeant Alva gave his right leg serving our country, even as he was required to hide his sexual orientation. And there's the story of Staff Sergeant Tracy Dice Johnson from the North Carolina National Guard, whose wife, Staff Sergeant Donna Johnson, was killed by a suicide bomber in Afghanistan in 2012. As a war widow, Tracy continues to serve our country in uniform, and she's now receiving the same survivor benefits as every other family of America's fallen patriots. Tracy's story is emblematic of a deep and abiding commitment in recent years, both in this department and across the country, to recognizing gay and lesbian marriages and families in full accordance with the law. And here at the Pentagon, we have been and remain strongly committed to making sure that all our military families and spouses can fully and equally receive the benefits their loved ones have earned. From TRICARE coverage to housing allowances to side-by-side burial at Arlington. Even in times of resistance, like when some states wouldn't issue DoD ID cards to same-sex spouses at National Guard facilities, we pushed back, not just because our service members and families deserved it, but because everyone's rights had to be protected. The Department of Defense has made a lasting commitment to living the values we defend, to treating everyone equally, because we need to be a meritocracy. We have to focus relentlessly on our mission, which means the thing that matters most about a person is what they can contribute to national defense. This is a commitment we must continually renew. And that's why, today, I'm proud to announce that the Department of Defense has completed the process for updating its military equal opportunity policy to include sexual orientation, ensuring that the department, like the rest of the federal government, treats sexual orientation-based discrimination the same way it treats discrimination based on race, religion, color, sex, age, and national origin. And I'm very proud of the work that the military services have put into this over the last several months, because discrimination of any kind has no place in America's armed forces. Recognizing that our openness to diversity is one of the things that have allowed us to be the best in the world, we must ensure that everyone who's able and willing to serve has the full and equal opportunity to do so. And we must start from a position of inclusivity, not exclusivity. Anything less is not just plain wrong, it's bad defense policy. It puts our future strength at risk. Embracing diversity and inclusion is critical to recruiting and retaining the force of the future. Young Americans today are more diverse, open, and tolerant than past generations. And if we're going to attract the best and brightest among them to contribute to our mission of national defense, we have to ourselves be more open, diverse, and tolerant too. It's the only way to compete in the 21st century. And it's also vital for developing our military's future leaders, innovators, and strategists. While we don't know who they'll be or what they'll look like, we do know they could come from anywhere. It takes decades to grow our senior military leaders, and today we can't afford to close ourselves off to anyone. Moreover, taking active steps towards a military that reflects the rich diversity of America won't just make us stronger, it'll also help us build bridges to our country and to our communities that otherwise aren't connected enough to those who serve and sacrifice on their behalf, on behalf of this country we all love. As we remind ourselves how diversity and inclusion help make us stronger, we must also remember another reason why they're important, because they're part of our national character. In the years past, gay and lesbian service members who desired to serve openly were not aberrant or counter to the ideals that our military has already defended. They're the same ideals enshrined in our founding documents, the belief that we're all created equal, endowed with unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These words are more than a pinnacle to strive for, they're real. And the men and women of this department prove that every day. Indeed, the sacrifices made by Corporal Darling, Staff Sergeant Alva, and Staff Sergeant Johnson, sacrifices of life, limb, and love, are no different from sacrifices that have long been made by Americans in uniform, both men and women, gay and straight alike, each willing to defend this country and its ideals and help make a better world. And whether they fall in combat or go on to live a long life, in the end, the earth makes no distinction in its embraces of our honored patriots, and neither should we. So as we celebrate LGBT Pride Month, let us take pride in all who step forward to serve our country, past, present, and future. As fellow citizens, we honor them, we thank them, we cherish them, today and always. Thank you. I'm going to go down and listen to the comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Carter. Please have a seat. Please have a seat. So the theme for this year's Pride event is leadership. Last year's theme was the family. Each year we choose a different theme, and we share some of our stories. What I've asked the panelists to do is introduce themselves. I will not go through an introduction. You have their bios in the program. But just a short introduction from each of them, and then we're going to have a discussion. I'll follow up with a couple questions. On the theme of leadership, specifically, I'm interested in how their experiences have helped shape their character, to be the leaders of character who they are today. To reflect on where they've traveled, but more importantly, to talk about how that prepares them to lead in the future. And so what we'll do, we'll start with Major Al Mackay, then we'll transition to Miss Amanda Simpson, Master Sergeant Robert Code, and Chaplain Karis Graham. So if you would, ladies and gentlemen, please start by introducing yourself.
My name is Major Alistair Mackay. I'm currently serving with Installation and Logistics Headquarters Marine Corps here in the Pentagon. Presently have 21 years of service, active duty service, 16 years in the Marine Corps, and 5 years as an enlisted sailor in the United States Navy. I would like to introduce my husband of 4.5 years, Stephen Peters, who's here today in the front of the audience. Although we've been married a relatively short amount of time, we have been partners together for over 8 years. Stephen has always been at my side through thick and thin and has supported me through 2 deployments, the last of which was in Afghanistan for 12 years. Of note, Stephen is also the founder of the American Military Partner Association, which is a support network for partners, spouses, families, and LGBT service members and veterans. And one bragging comment, he's also the Pentagon Military Spouse of the Year for last year. So I have to give him recognition for that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary and Mr. Secretary and Mr. Secretary and Eric. Generals, distinguished guests, thank you for letting me be here today. As mentioned, my name is Amanda Simpson. I'm the Executive Director for the Army Office of Energy Initiatives, but I'm also the first transgender woman appointee in history. We're on the clock here, folks. But I really want to make it clear, and I think I mentioned this, I had the opportunity last year to say, that I don't have this position because I'm transgender. I was not appointed because I'm transgender. I'm serving because I happen to be the best person to do the job. And it would certainly behoove me to introduce my partner, Jennifer Watkins, also in the front row, because I don't want to miss it, everyone else. So, thank you, Jennifer, for being here with me.
Great, thank you. Master Sergeant Code.
Wow, how do you follow that up? Mr. Secretaries, General, Sergeant Major of the Army, distinguished guests, visitors, fellow LGBT soldiers, LGBT civilians, I am Master Sergeant Robert L. Code. I am currently the G3 Sergeant Major for the United States Army Criminal Investigations Command. I would be remiss if I don't introduce my fiance, Mr. Loic Janin of Sète, France. We will be married on the 29th of next month. And as of this month, I've been in the Army for 20 years, started my career as a corrections specialist, and then later became a CID agent, and I'm honored to be here today.
Great, thank you. Chaplain Graham, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, sir, Mr. Secretary. My name is Chaplain Karis Graham, and on this day, to the day, I was ordained as a pastor within the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America in Seattle, Washington. If you had told me almost 30 years ago that I would be here among you, I would have said Hades has frozen over. So it's indeed an honor. I've served 14 years on active duty, 13 years within the reserves, and I'm going through a very sequential evolution as coming out openly as a lesbian chaplain and also embracing my Native American heritage. I'm very proud to introduce my wonderful wife of almost 1 year, Laura Maria Oliphant. Yes, and she is the love of my life.
So, Major Mackay, start with you. If you could tell us how your leadership was impacted under Don't Ask, Don't Tell as a Marine officer, and how it's changed since then.
Well, I think one of the key things as a Marine officer, at least the key issue for me serving the last 16 years, was the fact that I was often having to lie, not just to myself, but to others within my job. And I know particularly the Marines within the audience, that's heresy. The fact that there's a Marine or a Marine officer that is lying to other Marines. But the fact is, throughout my career under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I was hiding who I was. I also had to hide who I was off duty. For example, most people talk within their work environments of what they did at weekends or who they're socializing with or who they hang out with. I used to make up stories because I wanted to pretend that I was like everybody else. In my book, that's a lie. So I was pretending to be somebody I wasn't. So the bottom line, I was impacting my integrity as a Marine officer. And I have to, of course, live with that impact, that lack of integration, even today. I think at one point as a company commander, that really impacts me today is that I knew Marines who were in fact gay and lesbians under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. In nearly all cases, I stayed quiet. I was not prepared under Don't Ask, Don't Tell to bring up to my commands that I suspected a Marine that was gay or a lesbian within the service, and foreseeably they would have been processed out of the military. Again, I'm caught in a lie to myself and a lie to my service. As far as degrading trust in others, being less than honest, I portrayed a character and a leader that was not authentic, at least not fully authentic, and was not fully truthful, particularly in my off-duty hours. This, of course, affected my relationship with my Marines. It weakened my professional relationship with my Marines. That is not the way I wanted to be as a Marine, not the way I wanted to be as a Marine officer, and certainly not the way I wanted to lead a professional career. As far as the way ahead after Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the repeal thereof, I now have the ability to live, work, and lead in the open as a person who I am, not portraying a person that I am not. Of course, this is vitally important, I'm sure, for everybody here, that you are showing people who you are and really what type of leader you are. And finally, my professional and my leadership abilities are the focus as a Marine and as a Marine officer. My sexual orientation does not play into that as far as what type of leader I am. It makes up part of what I am, but it doesn't impact the leader that I can be.
Okay, good, thank you. If we have time, I'm going to follow up on a couple things you said there. Ms. Simpson, can I ask you how your experience has shaped you as a leader?
You know, leadership is all about trust, right? It's trust not only from those that you lead, but trust in yourself to lead. And that trust is earned. It's based upon your credibility, your honesty, your integrity. It's not about your rank or your title. And your truth, your honesty, your integrity isn't worth much if you aren't authentic, not only to those that you interact with, but to yourself. And for me, when I became open and authentic with the people that I work for and with myself, I trusted myself more to lead, and they trusted me to lead them. And so I became a better leader.
Very good, thank you. Master Sergeant Code, you're representing the NCO Corps in a way here, and thank you for doing so. No pressure there. But I want
What's that?
I want to ask you about your experiences and how they've shaped you as a leader of character.
Well, sir, into the Army back in 1995, of course, and then I think the first experience for me was back in 99, 2000, out in Fort Lewis, Washington. I had disclosed my sexual orientation to someone very close to me, and that person got drunk at a party and decided to disclose that information to people that I didn't want that shared with. The very next day when I went on duty, of course, I'm working in one of the regional corrections facilities, which is a prison. I was very nervous as to how all the leaders were going to approach me, having known that already. So I actually went up to an NCO and asked him, said, "Hey, Sergeant, I know you probably heard this rumor going around in the barracks. What do you think about it?" They're like, "Well, hey, the best way to squash a rumor is not to repeat a rumor, and if a friend betrayed you, then that person is not a friend." They didn't care that someone had outed me, and the NCO still stood by me under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So how did that shape me as a leader? Well, I wanted to be a mentor, and of course, everyone knows a mentor is it's a voluntary developmental relationship between a senior person with senior experiences and someone with lesser experiences. But then it's characterized by mutual trust and respect. And as a mentor, I just always wanted to be that beacon for soldiers to come and talk to, regardless of your sexual orientation. I mean, I think even now, people watching this, people out in the crowd, had no idea about me. So this is still kind of my coming out, because being an LGBT service member doesn't define who I am. I am a soldier first. I am a leader. My sexual orientation, like the Major said, is just a part of that. And I'd be remiss, there's one story I would like to share, and I have to read it because if I don't, it would do an injustice. Back in 2003 to 2006, I was a drill sergeant in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. In 2012, one of my battle buddies, who is now retired, had actually seen on social media that I had a same-sex partner. I'm going to read this. I redacted to keep his identity unknown and took out some of the expletives. So, of course, you always know you're in a bad way, even as a kid, when someone addresses you by your first, middle, and last name. And I really didn't know he remembered my middle name from all these years ago. So the email he shared with me is as follows. "I have a bone to pick with you, first off. Second off, I have to say prosper well, my friend. So first off, this part is all about me. I've been so dang confused since I saw your post about you and Loic on social media. I mean, you think you know someone and then you get a shotgun blast to the neck. I pass no judgment on you at all. I'm just so dang aghast at this for many reasons. But as I have sat back and reflected with my wife, the writing was on the wall the whole time. It is not my intent to seem mortified by your relationship at all, so please don't think that. I think about it all the dang time, that our world accepts the fact that love comes in many ways, and it should be any human being's right to choose who they love, regardless of race, religion, or sex. I guess I was shocked to read about it on social media, not having a clue. At least with another drill sergeant that we knew, we all knew about her, and we could choose to accept her lifestyle or ignore it. For me, I accepted it, and I would have accepted you as well. Not that you needed it, but like I said, this is a part about me being greedy and selfish, I know. So now about you. I suspect life must have been hard for you at times, that you had to mask who you were, that mask that you wore must have been heavy. I feel so bad for the people that have had to live their lives as a facade because they cannot be who they really are. I'm not really sure if this was your case or not, but I'm sorry if you have had to live that way if it were. Robert, I want you to know I'm still your friend and value the times we spent together cooking up some privates and here and there, and that my opinion of you has not changed at all. I think of you as the greatest person and one of the few that I will call a friend, even though we don't keep in contact much. Know this, if you're ever in Phoenix, you better give me a call. Smokey. And that just goes to show you that, you know, your battle buddies still appreciate you. You can be a mentor even if you are estranged in how you communicate with them.
Good. Thank you for sharing that. You know, I'll share with you, Master Sergeant Code, when I was selected for promotion to general in 2012. And made a decision to come out more publicly than just my friends and family, but come out to my colleagues at work during that ceremony. I wasn't quite sure how those individuals I've served with so many years, how they would react with this news kind of being sprung upon them, especially those that traveled a long way. I got to tell you, my absolute strongest allies and who impressed me the most were the NCOs. From the command sergeant major down to the most junior corporal. They were the most professional and most supportive by far. And I just want to thank you for your words today. So, Chaplain Graham, we've talked and you've kind of told me about a little bit about your unique experiences. And I remember you saying that somehow being a lesbian actually saved you and makes you who you are today as a better person. Would you please talk about that?
Yes, sir. I came from a religious, conservative Texas family. And I feared God, to be honest, as a child. And that fear of God evolved during my adulthood through people that represented God. And I found myself being forced practically, when I joined the military, to be very flexible. One of the phrases I learned in Air Command and Staff College, and I did listen, was that air power is the key to flexibility. Flexibility is key to air power. I was forced to have to be flexible. I never knew when I was going to be outed by others. And so I continued to grow. I went and became a counselor. I became a social scientist in Afghanistan for the Department of the Army. I helped eradicate, hopefully, poverty in international development. And so when I sit down with airmen or other military personnel and civilians, I encourage them from my heart to be everything that they can be as whole people, to never let other people stop them by what they say, to grow, to learn, to thrive. And I think that has made me a better leader. I can no longer live in sanctimony, and that word means to live apart from other people. That's a boss. But now I can sit with airmen and be totally who I am. Very quickly, for example, I was, shortly after Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I was assigned to the 914th Reserve Air Wing in Niagara, New York. And while I was there, I walked into the wing commander because I knew I had to be really truthful because I had come so far personally with my wing commander. So this was all in slow motion. Think about this happening. And I walked in and I had a nice chat with him and I said, well, sir, there's one thing you need to know, that I am lesbian, but most importantly, I am a good chaplain. And he said, Chaplain, I don't care what you are or who you are, as long as you love these airmen. And from that day forward, I was free to be who I was with the men and women that I served in Niagara. And believe me, they would come to me struggling in relationships and saying, my husband did this or my wife did that. And I could totally relate because they knew, many of them, that I was married and that I too struggled. And to always say to your spouse, you're always right.
I bet you make a pretty good marriage counselor. Thanks, Chaplain. All right, so Major Mackay, thanks for sharing kind of what's behind you, but so what? So how do you use that experience to be a better leader today?
Well, I think so. I think I would like to look at my experiences and sharing my experiences as resilience. I've certainly developed some resilience over the last 2 decades, particularly under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. There were times that I certainly wanted to leave the service and put it behind me And I decided that I would continue with the service. I would push on, despite the fact that the service didn't necessarily, or the military in general, wasn't allowing me to be who I was. I would hope that my experiences and my example through that resiliency and sharing it with others, they can take that example and use it in their own lives and their own careers. I've also become, and I share this with others, I think I'm an example of diversity. Service members come in all different flavors. I happen to be one of those different flavors. But the important part is that I am a service member, and I think all service members, and using my example again, should understand that and use that to their own benefit and to the military in general. I'm going to exemplify the importance of honor, courage, and commitment, particularly the commitment part. I've stayed committed to myself and to the service, to the Marine Corps, at least for the last 16 years of that service. And I would pass on those experiences and would hope that others, even through their trials and tribulations, would also stay the course and stay committed. And also, the other two, honor and courage, those are important. Don't forget who you are, and don't forget what you're doing and why you're doing it. I would hope also that I would share those experiences with others, and they would benefit from that.
Very good, thank you. We're just about out of time, but I want to ask you, Ms. Simpson. So, you shared your experience, and now that you're out, aren't you just the same as everyone else?
One would think so, you know, but the transition was a total process. I mean, when I transitioned, the director that I worked with, and I had a variety of different roles at the time, told me that there were people that were uncomfortable with me, and he could not make them work for me, and so I couldn't have a job anymore as a manager of programs. I was also asked to step down as the chief test pilot for the organization that I had established years before. So it was very, you know, it was a difficult spot for me. I had to figure out what I was going to do. But there were many obstacles, many roadblocks that were placed in front of me, but I worked with people. I found allies, I formed teams. I began to take on projects that nobody else wanted, but by bringing out the best in the people that I was able to pull together, we did amazing things. And within a few years, I was asked to come back and fly again for the company because they acknowledged that I was the best pilot that they had. And then people who wouldn't work for me were clamoring to get onto my teams because I had the most exciting and unique projects, things that nobody thought would get done, but we made it happen because we all were authentic and we opened those communication lines and we worked with each other and we found ways to surmount just really unique obstacles. But that's what I did in my transition. That was I have to succeed or not, or there's no option. There was no option. So I took those skills that I learned in my transition and put them into my leadership style. And that's why I'm a good leader now. And so it's not just that I'm the same as everybody else. I have unique experiences. I've literally looked at life from both sides now.
All right. Master Sergeant Code. There's not many people I could ask to follow Ms. Simpson, but You're knocking it out of the park. But if I could ask you, again, I'm going to have to keep our remarks brief because we're just about out of time. What advice would you give to junior leaders, or actually all leaders? What call to action in support of equal opportunity for the total force?
Sir, I would just have to say, again, like the two hardest things for a leader to do is to set the example and enforce standards. As a leader, always be careful of what you do and don't do, say and don't say. And there's three types of leaders in this world. There are leaders that watch stuff happen, there are leaders that make stuff happen, and then there's leaders that are like, dang, what happened? So you have to choose which type of leader you want to be for your formations, and of course put your best foot forward, keep their best interests at heart, because remember, all service members are entitled to outstanding leadership. Make sure you provide that leadership and mentorship to them, Bull.
Cool. All right. And then we'll end with you, Chaplain Graham, which is, I think, a good way to end. So, chaplains, we all know, come in all different shapes and sizes. Liberal, conservative, you name it. Tell us about your experience as a senior ranking lesbian chaplain and how that's going.
I will be honest and fair. I'm humble and I'm grateful because it has gone well, very quick. Before I pinned on 06, I work in the Chief of Chaplain's office, and there we really do represent all sorts of faith groups, and they have always shown me respect. And I did not want my colleagues, chaplains, chaplain assistants, civilians to be blindsided. So I scheduled 6 coffee appointments at Starbucks back to back. And 6 espressos later, I have to tell you that each person was very gracious to me and respected and honored me and came to my pinning on, even when I told them my wife would be there pinning on the Eagles. And I would do the same for them because I've walked a similar path from very different faith lens. And I respect them just as they accept me. And they are the consummate professionals. So I am humbled and blessed and grateful.
Great. Thank you. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending today's event. We will conclude shortly with the departure of the official party. After the departure, the Rock Creek Singers will perform one more song, and the protocol office will dismiss the audience. I hope you can stay, but I warn you, if you do, you'll be humming their music for the rest of the afternoon. Okay? So I know what song they're going to sing, and it sticks with you. But if you must go, please depart quietly. Thank you all for attending. Please stand for the departure of the official party.
hear you. Make them hear you. How justice was our battle, and how justice was denied. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. And say to those who blame us for the way we chose to fight, that sometimes there are battles which are more than black or white. And I could not put down my sword when justice was my right. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. Go out and tell our story to your daughters and your sons. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. And tell them in a struggle we were not the only ones. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. Your sword can be a sermon or the power of the pen. Teach every child to raise his voice, and then, my brothers, then will justice be demanded by 10 million righteous men. Make them hear